걔는 정말 카리스마가 있지 않나요? I am the Unbreakable Sword, Captain of His Majesty's Royal Guards and best friend to Lee Hee-myung. 1994, the Kingdom of Korea. I was young when I met him for the first time. So was he. He was the crown prince. I was the son of an official at the royal court. My father was a good friend of his. I never had much connection with the royal court. I just noticed my father working every day. The queen had passed away long ago and the prince was raised by the king alone. The king was the owner of the manpashikjo, the mysterious flute that was gifted to his ancestor King Seung of the Silla dynasty by the Dragon King of East Sea. It was believed that it had powers beyond imagination. One day, the news came, the news that changed two worlds. The king was assassinated by traitor Lee Lim, the king's half-brother. The manpashikjo was broken into half by the prince during the fight. Half of it was stolen by the traitor, and the other half remained with the prince. The prince was attacked too, but he was alright except for a lasting scar on his neck. That night, an unknown person came to rescue the prince. The prince could not see the person's face, but the person left behind one thing. One ID card. Lieutenant Jong Tae-ul's ID card. The prince was announced the new king and the four-tiger sword was bestowed upon him. He was only 8 years old. My father visited the royal mourning that day. Head court lady No was also present. I saw His Majesty for the first time that day, mourning in sorrow. He cried as he completed his father's last rituals and started his new journey as the king of the Kingdom of Korea. I went up to him to offer a candy, but he was too upset to take it. He sent me away, but I didn't move. I stood still beside him. I was even younger than him and hardly had any knowledge of manners in front of the king. Later that day, after the rituals, I saw His Majesty solving math and physics problems all over a huge board in the palace. I asked him whether it was fun to study, just to lighten the mood. But he just asked me to go away and getting irritated, asked who my father was. He was your father's friend, I answered. At the end of the day, I saw him enter the palace with head court lady No. She told him that he did a great job completing the rituals and he must rest and be ready to take on his responsibilities as the new king. But he suddenly fell to the ground and cried his heart out. I could not stand it anymore. I started crying too. I said I wouldn't stop until he did. His Majesty was kind enough to ask me not to cry. I stopped as he himself stopped crying. He walked up to the 4-year-old kid sitting on the floor and gave him a toy sword that glowed. On that day, His Majesty announced him as his Unbreakable Sword, a quite honorable position in the king's court. The captain of Royal Guards of the Palace. 2020, Kingdom of Korea. Now that I think of it, it was quite kind of him to approach me with this position. 25 years have passed since then. His Majesty has grown up into a fine man. I've been his unbreakable sword protecting him from any danger that shows up. Over the years, I've not only served the king but have also found a precious and down-to-earth friend in His Majesty. We were trained in the Korean Navy together and had great times. The royal family had always shown boundless kindness towards me. He has never let there be any difference in treating himself and me in this palace. We grew up together in this palace like brothers. I believe our friendship comes before my life and my sense of duty to protect the king comes before our friendship. I've investigated on Lieutenant Jong Tae-ul for years on His Majesty's orders, but no such person exists in the Kingdom of Korea. He is Lee Hee-myung, the King of Kingdom of Korea, and I am his unbreakable sword, Captain Yeong. I closed the book with a thud and curled up on my bed. 2050, South Korea. A city packed with people and skyscrapers. I was walking home that day. I stopped for a while in midst of the crowd and stared at the huge digital billboard on top of a skyscraper. It showed the picture of the new actor in Korea, Park Kyung-jae. He debuted a year ago in some historical drama which is still on air now. Apparently people liked his work so much that he became the new star of the country. Well, I'm a crazy fan too. I looked at the billboard and sighed. He really is charismatic, isn't he? Later, I went back to my room and started searching for the poster of the historical drama where Kyung-jae made his debut. Ever since I moved to this one-room apartment, things have been messier. Well, in my words. My room was full of posters of thoughts, quotes, and Park Kyung-jae. I'm sure I left it around here. Finally, I found it and placed it on my desk. Right then, someone knocked at the door. It was my neighbor. He was like an older brother to me. Although he was elder to me, we treated each other like pals. I called him inside and gave him a cup of tea. So, still applying for jobs, are you? Yeah, only part-time jobs for now. I got you something today. Remember the antique shop I told you about the other day? I got this from there. He reached for the inner pocket of his coat and handed out a pretty wooden kalimba. Oh, it's pretty! Thank you so much. I didn't know what to get for you, so I just got this. Hope you like it. It's wonderful. I'll learn and play it someday. He talked for a little while more and left. I was left alone in my room. I lay on my bed and stared at the ceiling for some time. Then got up, thinking about Kyung-jae again. Should I just write a fan letter to him? I watched a lot of fantasy dramas till date, including W2 Worlds, Dramaworld, etc. Going inside a webtoon, falling in love with a comic character, going inside a phone and landing in a particular drama. But that's just fantasy. There's a reason it's called fantasy, because they're not real. They just don't happen in real life. If only that was really possible. Anyway, I should stop this nonsense of mine and do something worthwhile. I mumbled to myself. I liked reading history books. Real stories from decades before used to fascinate me the most. I tried watching some kalimba tutorial on my phone, but lasted only for a few minutes. I grabbed a new history book I had bought that day. It was an autobiography of some royal guard from years ago. It's weird to think of it now that the country was called Kingdom of Korea then. Anyway, I started reading it loud to myself. First scene overlaps. A few days passed. Winter had finally come. I finished the first volume of The Unbreakable Sword. The legend of the parallel worlds fascinated me as much as the narrator did. After reading the first volume, I realized that the historical drama in which Kyung-jae was working was based on the same story, but the story was shown from the king's perspective. Kyung-jae was playing the role of the captain of royal guards, the narrator of my book. That would make him look better, I thought. I was moving to Seoul that day, to my mom's place. It had been years since I visited her last after moving to Busan. My best friend Byul was at my place that day to see me off. After I showered, I turned on some music and started packing. A towel was still draped around my wet hair. I was never a big fan of packing since childhood. I needed some music. Additionally, seeing Kyung-jae's photo as my laptop's wallpaper boosted up my spirits even more. I twirled across the room as I shifted my clothes from the wardrobe to my bag. In between, I hugged the laptop screen in happiness and pulled Byul into my crazy dance. You and your fandom, seriously. Byul, come on. Well, there is no harm. He doesn't even know you exist. How does that matter anyway? Hey, look at you, you're even winking! Just find someone real, will you? He's a celebrity. In reality, I don't think I'll find someone who can make me dance so fast that I don't get a chance to set foot on any sorrow. Girl, I don't see your future in this. At that time, my life was mostly made happy by fangirling over Kyung-jae. Seeing him made me happy. We enjoyed a lot that day while packing. We sang, danced, and enjoyed our time. She clicked a lot of pictures of me that day, and I hers. Soon it was time to leave for the station. She said she'd look after everything and lock the apartment behind me. I left immediately after having lunch. I had a train to catch at 3 p.m. KST. How many tickets would you need, ma'am? One would be fine. Traveling alone? I nodded, bending down to see the booking clerk through the hole made to give out the tickets. May I have a look at your ID, please? I handed my university ID card to him. Myung Sung Hee, age 25, he read out, having a quick look at it. He handed it back to me. He soon approved and gave me the ticket. There was a never-ending queue behind me. Busan train station was quite packed that day. I entered the compartment, sat on my designated seat. The clerk mentioned I'd have no compartment mates with me. Though there were many people at the station, there weren't many passengers to Seoul that day. My luggage consisted of just one backpack and nothing else. I was wearing a high-neck pale yellow sweater with denim jeans. My hair was middle-parted and open. When I was younger, Mom used to tell me how beautiful and wavy long hair I had. Well, it had been years since then, and now I had cut my hair at shoulder length. I just liked it that way. Soon the train journey started. It was a 2-hour journey, so I bought my kalimba with me, just to play it when time permitted. I never tried it since my neighbor gifted it to me. I did almost learn to play it though, through tutorials. About 1 hour had passed. I raked through the main pocket of my backpack to get a hold of the kalimba. Finally I found it, held it in my hands. I recalled the tune that I had learned to play through the tutorial for a moment. I started playing. The kalimba had a sharp sound, a sharp, high-pitched sound, yet peaceful. Being content, I smiled at myself as if I had achieved something. I continued. 1 line, then 2 lines. I closed my eyes in amusement. Suddenly, there was a huge crashing noise. I felt a tremendous jerk. I dropped the kalimba on the floor shocked. I saw a certain blinding shine on the keys of the kalimba on the floor. I was terrified and frightened. The train was constantly moving as if it was hanging off a cliff. Panicking, I lifted up the kalimba and held it tight in my hands. There was another loud crash, and this time it was for real. I felt like I had met with an accident. For a moment, I could feel the roof of the train crashing on me. But then I must have blacked out. I didn't know how much time had passed. Maybe it was oblivion. It was all dark. I didn't really open my eyes, but I could feel that it was dark. I couldn't even tell if I was awake or unconscious, or was I really thinking, but slowly I could feel the breeze, cold breeze touching me. I could feel my hair flying and falling all over my face. I came to realize I was moving. The half-conscious me thought, so the train managed to get on and move again? So, am I alive? I opened my eyes slowly. Initially, I couldn't see anything with my blurry vision. It was still dark. Slowly, I began to see things. I could see only the face of a person from below, a black suit which blended with the black of night. The starry sky was visible behind his head. The stars were like tiny white stones floating on a jet black ocean. Now it felt like we were riding a horse. He turned and looked down at my face. I was stunned to see the familiar face I had dreamt of 1,000 times. Park Kyung-jae?
이젠 괴롭지 You will be fine like a rising star 나도 저 별빛이 보여 같은 날 같은 시간 So why don't you stay Please don't go away 곁에 올게 어두운 밤이 와도 나의 꿈에 닿을 때 사라진 두려움 You follow You follow 끝없이 난 걸을게 그대의 주위를 I will be back 영원을 약속해 I don't need to prove it 기울어져가는 시간을 되돌려 Just stop it 외로움도 그리움도 피하긴 힘들어 내가 있어 겁먹지 마 You will light You will shine bright 결말의 빛이 보여 같은 날 같은 시간 So why don't you
당신은 누구입니까? 내가 상아 아니라고 상희, 명상희 이것은 한국의 왕국이라고 불렀습니다. 이게 다 뭐야? 이건이 다수였다. 아닌데 이 사람은 누구입니까?